Welcome, welcome, welcome. Actually, wow, we will record now, and we are recording. And if you don't know me, I am Kirk M. Samuels, the Intimacy Incubator. I am bringing you a more connected world. And this morning, I have one of my favorite people on to talk about something that it has become something that I've been almost fascinated with lately. And so first and foremost, I mean, she's been on twice already, I think, and she's back again. I really appreciate her. I really value her opinion, her perspective, all that kind of stuff. So let me introduce you all to the great, I don't know what side of the screen she'll end up coming on, but to the great Barbra Russell. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Kirk. I am doing well. It's good to be back with you again.
It is great to be back, and I'm so excited to be having another conversation. I'm always better after a conversation with you. And so for anyone who doesn't know, let's talk about who you are. So, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Oklahoma, a preacher's kid who didn't really plan on being a preacher, a counselor, a speaker, none of that. In fact, I was running away from that as much as I could. So my journey has taken some turns and twists, and it's been an interesting one. But currently, I did wind up going back to school, albeit late in life, not just right out of high school and go to college and following that format. But I got my master's in counseling, and I have been loving that part of my life and have expanded that to do workshops and seminars. And I've written the book, as you know, Yes, I Said No. And I love this part of my life. That's so different than what I thought it might be.
Wow. I have a confession to make. And I hope you can forgive me. I hope grace is a part of your life. I loaned your book out to someone and I never got it back.
Wow. I will have to get you another copy.
and I realized that here this morning. I was like, man, I never got. So I guess that says something about your book. I mean, at your book launch, I was sitting at the table, just like reading it right there. And it was pretty fascinating right out of the gate. So I wanted to confess to you here in the open about my transgressions.
Okay, well, I will forgive you. Particularly, I'm getting ready to do a relaunch. I'm going to have a new book cover design. I'm going to have a workbook that will go along with that. And I'm going to also record an audiobook. And so, Yes, I Said No. The subtitle says How to Set Healthy Boundaries and Increase Your Self-Esteem. So the workbook will give more specific ways that people can apply the information to their lives. So I'm working on that right now, and I'm excited about that relaunch.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And so, and to get, I mean, eventually, I guess we got to get into the topic here this morning because it is fascinating. And, you probably see this a lot. I actually end up seeing this a lot because of the kind of work I do with guys and some with couples. But we find people at the end of relationships. And the topic that I went with this morning is, and I did the same topic last week from a male perspective. And so this week I'm doing the topic from a female perspective. And the topic is her relationship just ended. What does she need to hear now? So let me right off the bat, let me ask you a question. Is it safe to say that the end of a relationship is almost like, or can be like a death? To a person, like a death of relationship. I mean, can it present like a death, a significant loss to a person?
It surely can. And I think you were talking about from a woman's perspective. Women are all about relationships. And guys are too. They just express it differently. But for women, with all of our emotions and hormones and that kind of thing, it really can feel like death. Death, because it is an ending, of course. It is a loss. Maybe even if you wanted it, it's still a loss. If you planned for it, it's still a loss. If you were surprised by it, it's all loss.
Wow. Oh, which is fascinating, actually. And we were talking about before we got started, like where we're going to go with this conversation. And truth is, we have no idea. But something you just said just kind of fascinates me. So even like, and again, from a woman's perspective, even if it was her choice, will she still experience some of the same things?
Yes, yeah, she will. You know, she's having that inner wrestling match, uh, perhaps with, should I do it? Should I not? Oh my
Mhm.
God, but I still care for this person. But oh no, I've realized this is not good for me. Sometimes relationships that you choose to end, you've realized they're not good for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Wow.
so even if it, in that case, it might be her choice. But then let's say it wasn't her choice. Then she's got all the other emotions of being devastated and dealing once again with death and loss.
Wow. That's just a fascinating idea. I guess I just never thought about until we had this conversation that it could be the same experience regardless of how it ended or who chose to end it and that sort of stuff. And and all of that is kind of a lead into to it being a loss in her life and that triggering or that leading into the stages of grief that come along with loss.
Right.
And this has been something that's been fascinating to me lately, just because I was just reflecting on my life and different things that I've gone through or going through and that sort of thing. But so I wanted to talk about the stages of grief, if I could, in terms of what what she would experience or what she may experience, because I almost wonder if, and again, I can't speak for women, but I almost wonder if it can feel like chaos in terms of all the different things that she may be experiencing. And I wonder if all those different things she may be experiencing are or could be elements and just the chaos that comes along with the grief stage, the stages of grief.
She certainly can. I think, you know, probably most people are very familiar with those stages of grief that Kubler-Ross put out there. And that first one being denial, I can't believe that this is happening. But, you know, it's so interesting, like even you were saying, we can know those things, but actually having to deal with them can be a whole different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to remember that denial, that's normal. But whenever, and you might have that chaotic feeling of being all across the board and having all the, you feel like, well, I'm going through all those stages at once. I'm depressed, I'm angry, I'm asking the questions, bargaining, and then I'm going right back to this can't really be happening. So
Mm-hmm.
that part of it feels very chaotic, that going back and forth.
Wow. And so when she's experiencing that denial phase, that denial stage, if you will, what might she what I want to say almost what thoughts or what might she be, what could be going through her mind, in terms of what does that look like? How does that present to her?
I think usually in the denial stage, there will be rationalization and justification. That is to try to say, oh, well, you know, it wasn't meant to be, or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
try to justify that I'll be okay. This can't really, but it's all their fault. And so they're looking outward instead of inward, trying to blame people, and you're grinning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was the therapist in you picking up on all that. Yeah. And I mean, and I'll tell you, just when you say that, it just flashed in my mind, and I was having this conversation with a guy not too long ago that, and again, maybe it's just the type of ways that I come across people, and that I interact with people, but rarely, if ever, correct me if I'm wrong, but rarely, if ever, will you find probably a scenario, or I've never heard a scenario where the woman, the wife, the girlfriend in the relationship says, you know what, it was all my fault, and
Right.
and he did nothing wrong.
Right.
Like, have you ever heard that before?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Still waiting for
See?
that phenomenon to happen.
See, that's why I grinned when you said that, because because yeah, in terms of the, but he did it, and I'm mad at him and it's his fault. I wonder if that was actually a thing, but I never heard that before, and I didn't know if anybody else had.
Yeah.
And so denial, and so if we go from denial, if we, and to be clear, these stages don't happen necessarily in any particular order. Am I correct?
That is correct. That is correct. That's generally the first stage, very commonly,
Mm-hmm.
but people feel a whole host of emotions, uh,
Yeah.
and along the way. And we've also heard the phrase that grief is crazy making, because
Yeah.
again, it kind of seems to come in waves, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll think, oh, phew, well, I'm better. Yeah, I've dealt with this part or whatever.
Yeah.
But kind of transferring and going from denial to actually allowing yourself to really grieve means that you start feeling those horrible emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that in order to heal the pain, you have to feel the pain.
Ooh, ooh, that was, ooh, I might steal that one, Barbara. I might, oh, wow. That is, ooh, that's a good one. That sounds like a Kirkism right there. In order to heal it, you got to feel it. Okay, so what about anger? What about the anger stage?
Yeah, because, and that commonly can come right along with that. Again, going out and certainly very angry outward to the other person. It's all their fault, and he done me wrong, and he wasn't the right guy, and that kind of thing. But interestingly enough, at some point in the process, that anger can turn inward. And a lot of times when you have the anger, how did I get myself in this situation? Why did I let it go on so long? I'm so stupid. And then that can lead quickly into depression.
Wow. And oh man, this is just, oh, this is so, I mean, I feel like I could almost go deep on every single one of these. And I mean, we might have to come back and wrap this up on another one, because
Right.
we could be here for 2 hours talking about this thing.
That is
When you
true.
said, when you said that some of that anger can turn inward, see, I think that might be a difference between women and men, that men quite often are outward focused, and our anger might manifest more on the outside, whereas women are more not only intuitive, not only
Right.
in touch with their intimate parts of who they are, but they're also quite often inwardly focused. And
Right.
so for you to say that anger can be pointed back inside, I never actually, I mean, that's fascinating to me, but it totally makes sense that, from a guy perspective, the anger is like, oh, the blood rushes to the hands and I want to punch something,
Right.
or I want to put a hole in the wall or something like that. And the whole idea that a woman could kind of turn some of that anger inward on herself.
Yeah,
And
and she can turn inward the anger that she has toward the guy. So maybe let's say they've had this breakup, but they decided they're going to talk again, and he's been angry, and he's punched the walls, and he's had that outward expression. But if she's been keeping her anger inside, it can just be pressed down and seething and just waiting for the opportunity. And he thinks, oh, we're in a good place, and wow, come to find out we're not. She explodes.
wow, man, that is, I'm telling you, that is so fascinating to me, because I mean, I get that from the guy perspective. His anger, he might do something stupid. He might
Yeah,
do something that he'll regret later, in terms of whether it's just kind of going off on her, or verbally, or in writing, or in the very extreme and unfortunate case, he might express that physically, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, from her perspective, that man, that's just spinning off inside of her. It's a fascinating idea. It's a fascinating thought.
yeah.
Um, and so what about bargaining?
So the bargaining, as we know, that's usually when the questions come up. And so we're actually kind of bargaining with life, with God, with ourselves, with other people. Well, if only this were different, or what if that had happened? And so that's all, and usually kind of an internal questioning process that goes on, particularly for women, and will go outward, can come inward again, but trying to make sense. I think people believe on all kinds of instances, if this can just make sense to me, if I can understand it, then I'll make sure it doesn't ever happen again.
Mm, wow.
So they're trying to
And
protect themselves. Yeah.
wow, guys definitely do that. We do that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's definitely a guy thing, that bargaining. And then and here's a huge one. depression?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Again, that can come from anger that's been, inwardly put down, a lot of it. Actually, if people can realize that when they're depressed, oftentimes if they can get in touch with what they've been hurt about or what they have been angry about, if they can identify how they're feeling insecure or inferior, in whatever way they can begin to do that and identify it, it will help them come out. I often say to my clients, if they've been really depressed and they show some of that anger, particularly for women, again, who aren't going to do that as readily and easily or as quickly as guys, then I'm applauding that they're mad and they're like amazed. But that means it's coming up and coming out. And of course, we know the anger is not bad. What we do with it can be bad, but anger, we need to experience that. Depression will experience it as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is probably, if I had to guess, this is probably one of those where you need to be careful with the depression in terms of the depth of it or the length of it, in terms of needing help.
Right.
And when it becomes a chronic thing, it going from okay, this is just as I'm recognizing today I'm feeling depressed, so this is a stage of grief, to okay, my depression this has been going on for weeks or months, depression, I mean, and or my depression is so deep that I'm thinking of thoughts that I shouldn't have and that sort of thing. So maybe that would be the red flag to get help in terms of helping to unpack that. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is so true. And oftentimes, if someone close to them notices that they've kind of been sinking into those symptoms of depression, it's hard to see it once you get way down low. And people might think it's situational, like you say, a grief, part of the grief. But if it goes on for a long time, you're having any bad thoughts, you're not functioning well at work or at home, then it's time to take another step and look into that.
Yeah. And so the signs of that, would that look like, just to try to capture what I think you just said, the signs of that would be other people noticing or maybe it affecting parts of your life? Is that when you need to kind of raise a hand or raise a flag and get help?
Yeah, probably. Because some people, usually people who are depressed, we think of obvious depression, you're sitting around sad. But it can also be a loss of motivation. All of a sudden, you were getting out and exercising every day and you just feel like lying on the couch all the time. And so sometimes you get so sunk into that you just think this is just normal. And that's when other people can say, wow, it's been a long time and you've seemed like you've been really down, because it can show up in the way that loss of appetite or eating too much, trying to comfort yourself, or losing sleep. There's a lot of things that come into those signs of depression.
Yeah. And I almost wonder, I'll pose this to you, I'll say between anger and depression, in terms of talking or in terms of expressing this to someone, with someone, could those be the two that you want to end up talking to someone about, but you can quickly burn out friends and family by dumping those two on them?
Yeah. And boy, and that could be hard to measure too. And that's when everybody needs those boundaries, maybe the friend who says, you've been talking about this for months now. Talk to me again when you've taken the next step, kind of thing. That can sound cruel, but might be the best thing for them, so that they're not just staying in that cycle of oh me, oh my, this is horrible, life sucks.
Yeah, but then it may also be appropriate to get professional help, though, beyond friends and family, though, right?
Oh, please, yes, always. Friends and family can only go so far. Professionals can be more objective and help. Some people need some medication, perhaps for a while, to help them get through that.
Wow. And then of the 5 stages, this is last in terms of our list here today. But as we said, they don't necessarily come in order, and they could cycle back, and you could jump from here to there. And 1 minute you feel this way, and the next minute you feel the next way. But as far as the fifth stage being acceptance, what does acceptance look like for her?
I think for her, when she comes to that place of having experienced all of those, acceptance can be, well, I'm sad, I'm not depressed. There's a difference. I'm sad that it didn't work out, but I have accepted that and perhaps realized I've been saved from a lifetime of pain or wrong decisions of this relationship that we think, oh, it should have been. But a quote I heard the other day that we waste a lot of time in could have, and if it should have, it would have. And
Wow.
so, yeah.
You dropping dimes this morning. Wow. I need to start writing. Oh, I'm put that on Facebook. Oh my goodness. That is a quote of all quotes, man. I need to, that's some good stuff.
Yeah, that's Jay Shetty, by the way, who has a lot of relationship tips if you want to check him out.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I love that. And so, with the acceptance, just kind of, and the way you just put that, I can almost see that from from a guy perspective in terms of my understanding of, okay, it ended, even if regardless of who, and even if the other person ended it, then I guess that just wasn't, it. That wasn't the one that I thought it was, or that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or what I hoped it would be, or something along those lines.
Exactly. I think sometimes with acceptance too, that people might have to go through a forgiveness process, forgiving the other person, or maybe themselves, or forgiving God or whomever for letting this happen, so that they can get to that place of acceptance.
Okay, so you just threw a twist in the plot. And so forgiveness being part of acceptance, can you help me understand? I mean, what does forgiveness have to do with acceptance? And on top of that, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I forgive you," and especially if faith is part of your value system.
Right.
I mean, we throw the forgiveness. I forgive you, but maybe not necessarily in my heart do I forgive you. How does forgiveness, how does that equate to acceptance? I never actually connected those dots before.
I think it's part of actually the grieving process that a lot of time is not identified, because as part of forgiveness, like if we know, like you said, if faith is part of what we embrace, then we know that the Bible says we should forgive. If our common sense says we need to just get over this, I need to let it go, I need to forgive that person, part of the steps of forgiveness is grieving what has happened. So if we've already been grieving, we're already kind of doing that process. So we look back, we think of all of those things. We might feel like we're throwing up again, we're being re-traumatized, but we need to have a cathartic release, so to speak. And so we say, okay, so I've decided to forgive. So that kind of formalizes. We talk about all of the events, the emotions, how we felt, what was going on. And then we'll say, okay, and so I forgive you for that time that you did this. And I forgive you for that time that you did that. We don't make it a global statement. Okay, I'll just forgive you. If we have 5 years of pain and hurt, that's a lot that we need to go through. But we want to like pull it all out and expunge it. We don't want it there anymore.
Wow. What about asking for forgiveness?
Asking for forgiveness is a big part of it as well, and can help with that acceptance too. So because not generally, I think in all relationships, there's two people involved. And so both of them have a portion of the responsibility, even though we initially, of course, want to just blame the other person. But if we haven't spoken up, if we haven't set boundaries, if we've gone along with that, then we can't just say it's all that other person's fault. We've allowed that. And so and for that, then in that, because we allowed it, then a lot of times, you know, we get passive aggressive and get snarky and critical and judgmental, and all of those things we need to ask forgiveness for.
That would take a tremendous amount of humility. I mean, especially, and that might, I mean, that's asking a lot. I mean, but I would agree, but the amount of humility that it would take to ask for forgiveness from the other person, man, that is tremendous. But I could see how it could be completely healing. I could see how it could allow you to move on and to move on well.
Yeah.
And that's just, I never thought about connecting those dots.
Yeah, it is very powerful. Usually that isn't something that's going to happen right away, of course, and it may not happen without some help, without saying, let me process my own hurt first and get to a better place where you're just not feeling like, oh, anytime that I see this other person, I'm just pouring salt in my wounds, because that's probably what it would feel like. So it may take a while, but wow, is that the final piece that really you can say, let that go? That's why we tell people, don't jump into another relationship right away without having done all of this work. There's a lot of work in releasing a relationship.
That was going to be where I led to next in terms of what she needs to hear. I mean, as we kind of come around the home stretch of this discussion, and I'm going to beg and plead for you to come back, because I think we unpacked a little bit of the stages of grief, but I think there's a whole nother conversation about what she should do next, like the action part of it, like how to step out that journey. There's the understanding, but then there's the action part of it. And so, I mean, I would love to come back and actually give some tangibles in terms of do this, do that, and all those kinds of things. But in terms of, but since you went there, what does she need to hear in terms of the moving on, in terms of, okay, back into dating, or the like the way you put it, the work that needs to be done, and all those kinds of things? I mean, what does she need to hear in terms of that?
Well, first of all, again, is giving herself time to grieve, to get over that. And then, you know, a fallacy that a lot of women have, we think of the Jerry Maguire movie, You Complete Me. And we think we're not complete without that other guy in our lives. And so for some women, not all, but some women, they need to learn to be okay by themselves. And so they might start doing a self-improvement program. They might take up a hobby. They might get into a different area so that their focus changes from, I have to be in a relationship to be happy, to I'm going to be happy. Then if I'm happy, I'm going to get in a good relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think in terms of our relationship past, each and every one of us, the only common factor in every relationship we had was us. And so sometimes we take that luggage from relationship to relationship, and then it ends up being baggage once we get into that next relationship, where I don't know that we necessarily do a great job at unpacking that, so that we don't carry that thing going forward. And then that's how we end up with the same cycles and the same loops and experiencing the same thing. How could this happen to me again? How could I fall for that again? How could I allow that to happen again? And so, and I would imagine from a woman's perspective, women have the gift of incubation. And so, I mean, biologically and even emotionally and spiritually, where things get inside women and they grow and grow and grow until it becomes full term, and then it's time to deliver that thing. And so I wonder if part of this journey for her is to unpack all of that and to, I guess you could say, do the self-development, the self-work, to not have that going forward into, because I mean, even if she got back got back into the relationship with the same exact person, you still have, if you haven't done the work, then you're still going to end up at the same place, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is for sure. I really liked how you described it. As we all take our luggage along for this new trip for the relationship in our lives. But if it doesn't work out, then we're left with the baggage, which is
Mhm.
the broken pieces.
Mhm.
And really, it's not just the broken pieces of the relationship, but the broken pieces of us.
Mhm.
And so we've been in that relationship, and that needs to heal until we can feel good about ourselves. Or again, we just go back and repeat the same cycle, thinking, well, that wasn't the right person, that wasn't my soulmate, and I'm going to keep searching. But that
Mhm.
underpinning of us keeps looking for the same type of person who will
Yeah.
help heal. And if we
Yeah.
heal ourselves, we don't have to go find another broken person in that same way.
Wow. Because then, yeah, taking that brokenness into the next relationship, that's more that's more pieces of you as opposed to more wholeness of you into that next relationship.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I almost wonder if we go back and do that self work where we can evaluate, okay, where did I get off track, and not only in that relationship but just in life period. I mean,
Exactly.
um, how do
Exactly.
I
Looking,
bring that full circle?
yeah, what was my part in
Yeah.
this? Because that's the only part that I can do anything about anyway, of course. And
Yeah.
so if I can look at that part, then like I say, maybe if I didn't speak up, if I felt like my voice was hindered, I can learn to speak up. If I didn't set boundaries, I can learn about setting boundaries,
Mhm.
whatever that is, that you want to have healed so that you can bring wholeness into a relationship.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. That is, I mean, will you please come back and let's let's do a part two? I beg you. I mean, this is because again, I think we've unpacked some stuff, but in terms of the practicality of what she should do going forward, is something that could be profound to someone experiencing this. And so I think today, I think I feel like the main summary is what she needs to hear is that if that there is a loss, and it can be essentially a death or a loss, and of the in that experience there's the grief process that can feel chaotic, and it can have all these different pieces and parts, and as I experience and as I know and as I come to experience these, I recognize that putting a name to that feeling can be freedom in itself.
Right.
But I think today just just the nugget of, there is a journey, there is a process. It's not linear, and it can be chaotic, but it's normal. Is there a timeline to that grief process?
Boy, there really is no defined timeline, uh,
Mhm.
other than to say we always want it to be over sooner than it really is most of
Yeah.
the time. So, and as I said before, we'll think, okay, I've gone through denial, I've been depressed, I've been angry, I've had the questions, okay, I'm ready for acceptance, and we're moving along with our lives, and then, bam, we get hit by it again, and
Yeah.
so it can return.
And all it takes is for you to drive past a certain spot or a certain song to come on the radio or a face to come on TV or a name to pop up. And next thing you know, to your point, you're right
Yeah,
back into anger or depression or
right.
something else like that. I mean, it's a pretty chaotic experience, but I guess the chaos is normal, kind of like childbirth.
Yeah,
It's pretty chaotic, but at the same time, the doctor comes in and he goes, "Yep, this is normal." And it's like, what? You got to be kidding me! This is normal.
right,
Um, but
right.
so
Yeah.
anyhow,
But we
thank
have
you.
to also just use that real quick analogy is that during the birth process, you wind up with a beautiful baby. During the birthing process of grieving and processing, then you wind up with a beautiful new you.
Wow, I'm telling you, you are on fire today. This is good stuff, man. This is phenomenal stuff. Okay, we're gonna come back and do part two, hopefully soon. Maybe even in a
Okay.
couple weeks. I don't know. I don't put you completely on the spot, but it'd be great if we could come right back and do part two to this whole thing. But I thank you so much, Barbara. I mean, you're phenomenal,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate you. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can, I do have a website, www.barbararussell.com. And there's contact information on there. I am on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all under my name in different forms. So I would love to connect with people, and if they would reference this talk or ask any questions, I would be delighted to answer.
That is phenomenal. And you are I can attest that you are very approachable. You're very relatable. I mean, you're a great communicator. You're a great speaker. You're a great author. You're a great friend. And so I appreciate you. And like I said, we will come back and do this again here really, really soon. I'm gonna be hounding you here shortly to see if I can convince you to do this in 2 weeks. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Absolutely.
And I truly, truly, truly appreciate you.
Okay, good talking to you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
now. All right.